place of tranquility in one of the busiest cities in the world. For the residents of Hong Kong, parks like this are a haven for reflection and life, and a place to withdraw from the fast lane. Some of the people here today are lucky that they don't live elsewhere in China. These are followers of Falun Gong, a movement in which practitioners exercise and meditate to attain spiritual enlightenment and better physical and mental health. Such meditation and the associated slow-motion exercises are followed by thousands of people in Hong Kong. Across the world, there are millions of supporters of Falun Gong or Law of the Wheel. All ages are represented in the groups, and to the accompaniment of special music, they perform routines with names such as the Falun Gong Way to Heavenly Circulation. According to the group's literature, Falun Gong began in prehistoric times, but only became known to the public in 1992. 7 years later, China banned the organization, calling it an evil cult, but laws are different in this former British colony. So, for the foreseeable future, Falun Gong, with its combination of ancient rituals and high technology, is allowed. Wincy Chang became a member of Falun Gong nearly 4 years ago. She says even though it's no threat to life in China, the Beijing government is frightened of its growing popularity.
It is not fair for the Chinese government to persecute Falun Gong supporters. Falun Gong is a peaceful movement that has gained many supporters in China in the past few years. That is why the Chinese government is keen on clamping down on the movement. They are scared because Falun Gong has too many practitioners.
The biggest gathering of Falun Gong members was held in Hong Kong in January 2001. The group says its popularity has soared, and it estimates there are 80 million followers across China. But even in Hong Kong, the authorities keep a wary eye on the movement and like to know exactly who is a follower and what they are up to. The former British colony is still regarded by most people as a relatively safe haven in what are seen as the restrictions on life in the rest of China. But even here, life is changing. Britain and China agreed on a transitional period, but not surprisingly, the central government has tried to exert its influence in Hong Kong. So Falun Gong, like capitalism, currently coexists with the Chinese form of communism. But while the people of Hong Kong have always felt a Chinese influence, Beijing's involvement in daily life is increasing. On the banks of the Hudson River in New York, the founder of Falun Gong, Li Hongzhi, practices meditation in exile from his homeland. The movement has a growing number of followers across North America. Li uses the international attention focused on the group, and particularly himself, to highlight what he says is the growing abuse of Falun Gong by the authorities in Beijing.
用枪杆子来镇压，到现在还没有，但是我很担心。
So far, there's been no use of guns, but I am concerned about the increasing levels of violence. Police have resorted to violence, beating up practitioners. Even some practitioners' bones have been broken and their hair torn out.
64-year-old Liu Yufeng is one of several hundred followers Falun Gong says have been murdered by the Chinese police. The group says he was beaten to death in July 2000 and says these pictures smuggled out of China show the body's bruises when it was returned to his family. Cao Zhenqi says he was detained for 30 days in Xiaomingyi prison and systematically beaten by the police before being released. Falun Gong members occasionally demonstrate in China, but their protests are swiftly broken up. Arrests have also taken place in Hong Kong, where these practitioners were detained while protesting against the arrests in Beijing. Falun Gong followers say the Chinese government has used other methods of repression, including sending colleagues to psychiatric wards. They hope that such methods are not going to be introduced here in Hong Kong and are concerned about what they see as threats to traditional freedoms. Falun Gong supporters reject accusations of brainwashing or forced membership. They say meditation and exercises similar to theirs have been practiced in China for centuries. Many Chinese attribute their health and longevity to such customs. So Falun Gong practitioners like these find it odd as well as distressing that their colleagues are being persecuted given the movement's historical roots. Shui Chang Qiu is 50 years old and has experienced the government's repression firsthand. He was on a visit to mainland China, but was later released and allowed to return to Hong Kong. The experience has increased his faith.
就是说，去年4月份，我在
Last April, I was in Wudan village in Shenzhen, filming a promotional video for Falun Gong.
宣传资料，就是的时候呢，
I was detained by the local security who sent me to a local detention center.
他们送到罗浮看守所。罗浮看守所就是在没有什么
There I was
证据的
detained for
情况
1
下，
month
把我
without any evidence against me.
关押了1个月。
I
在那
was
里面
beaten
呢
up by the
曾
criminals
经
who
被
were in
那
the same
些
detention center, and I was
监
not
狱罪
allowed to
犯
practice
殴打，
Falun Gong while I was in
反
there.
正不准练功。
Sarah Carmichael of Amnesty International in Hong Kong believes the victimization of Falun Gong is getting worse. But for many activists like her, the main concern is Hong Kong's Article 23, the controversial anti-subversion law supported by China that could stifle free speech in the special region.
If people want to go and meditate together in a public park, as long as they're not committing a public nuisance, yeah, they can do it. I mean, it's under Hong Kong law, you know, they're not doing anything wrong. That's the system here. I mean, that's what makes us a little different. And this is why Article 23 worries us so much, because we want to keep that difference, we want to keep that autonomy. And in fact, in Article 23, it actually says that we in Hong Kong should be enacting laws on our own against subversion, secession, treason, etc. All the provisions in Article 23. And yes, the case of Falun Gong shows how we are different from the mainland, and this is something that's guaranteed by the basic law. And this is something that, that we're prepared to defend.
Despite efforts by the Chinese government to discredit and clamp down on Falun Gong, the movement will not go away and continues to increase in popularity.